When we think of the Old West, names like Jesse James, Billy the Kid, and Wyatt Earp often steal the spotlight. Yet amidst these legendary figures lies a lesser-known outlaw whose story is equally, if not more, captivating: Johnny Ringo. Known as the King of the Cowboys, Ringo's life was a blend of mystique, danger, and unexpected twists. From his enigmatic origins to his untimely and mysterious demise, Johnny Ringo remains one of the most fascinating and elusive figures of the Old West. Join us as we delve into the intriguing tale of the outlaw you've likely never heard of, but won't soon forget. Johnny Ringo was a gunslinger unlike any other, often reciting Shakespeare while brandishing his weapon. While names like Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and the James Younger Gang are well known, Johnny Ringo remains a shadowy figure whose story intertwines with all of them. Ringo was a cousin to both the Younger and James brothers, and he was, for a time, a primary adversary of Wyatt Earp. Despite these connections, history has largely overshadowed his tale. Those familiar with Johnny Ringo recognize him as an intriguing character. His reputation as a cultured gunman who quoted literature has led many writers to romanticize him as one of the deadliest figures of the Old West, the pre-outlaw days of Johnny Ringo. Johnny Ringo was born John Peters Ringo on May 3, 1850, to Martin and Mary Peters Ringo in Washington, Indiana. He was the eldest of 5 children and had familial ties to the infamous Younger and James brothers. At the age of 14, Ringo's family embarked on a journey to San Jose, California. Tragically, his father died in an accident during their trip. Despite this hardship, the resilient family continued their journey and eventually settled in San Jose after spending a year at the Youngers' home. The details of Johnny Ringo's teenage years between 1864 and 1870 are sparse. There are unverified claims that he was a troublemaker who left his family in 1869, but records from the San Jose Directory in the 1870 Federal California Census indicate he was still in San Jose, working as a farmer. His sisters later recalled that he left San Jose with a harvesting team sometime between 1870 and early 1871. Ringo's reputation for delinquency seems to have developed later. He faced charges for discharging a firearm in a public square in Burnett, Texas. His involvement in the infamous Hoodoo War further fueled his legend as an outlaw, marking the beginning of his notorious reputation in the Old West. Mason County War. In September 1875, Johnny Ringo became embroiled in the Hoodoo War, a conflict that arose over cattle ownership between German settlers in Mason County, Texas, and American-born residents of nearby counties. Ringo's involvement was due to the killing of his close friend Moses Baird and the serious wounding of another friend, George Gladden. These events were orchestrated by Mason County Sheriff John Clark, who ambushed Baird and Gladden with the help of local gambler James Chaney. On September 25th, Johnny Ringo, along with 7 other men, sought to avenge Baird's death. Ringo and a companion named Bill Williams split from the group and went to Chaney's home, where they confronted and shot him. They then headed to the residence of another suspected collaborator, Dave Dool. When Dool appeared at his door with a firearm, Ringo and Williams were deterred and left the scene. The 2 men returned to their group and boasted about their actions over breakfast. A Texas Ranger report noted that either Ringo or Williams remarked that Chaney would start to smell if no one buried him. Further violence occurred 4 days later when other members of the group shot 3 more individuals. Despite these events, Ringo was not immediately charged for his role in Chaney's death. In December, Ringo was arrested twice for other offenses. The first arrest was for disturbing the peace in April when he fired his pistol in Burnett. He was released shortly after a $150 bond was posted. The second charge against Johnny Ringo was much more serious. He and former Texas Ranger Scott Cooley were arrested for threatening to kill the Burnett County Sheriff and his deputy. Fearing an attempt to free them, authorities transferred Ringo and Cooley to a prison in Austin. During this time, Ringo gained some notoriety, with the Austin Statesman reporting on January 4, 1876, that he had played an active role in the Mason County War. However, his name was misspelled as Ringgold in newspapers, which contributed to ongoing confusion about his identity. Official records confirm his name was indeed John Ringo. Though the Hoodoo War had ended, tensions in Mason County lingered for a few years. Ringo and Cooley were moved back to Burnett before being granted a request to stand trial in Lampasas County. Both were convicted and imprisoned for threatening law enforcement, but appealed the sentence. Unwilling to wait until 1877 for their appeal to be heard, their friends broke them out of prison in May 1876. Cooley reportedly died a month later. Despite being labeled a notorious outlaw by the media, Ringo only evaded capture for a few months before being imprisoned again in Austin. Surprisingly, his earlier appeal was successful, and the charges were overturned. However, he faced a new charge for the killing of Cheney. This charge was eventually dropped due to a lack of willing witnesses, leading to Ringo's release in May 1878. He then settled in Loyal Valley, Mason County. In November, Ringo transitioned from outlaw to lawman when he was offered the position of constable for Precinct Number 4 in Loyal Valley. It is unclear whether he accepted the role, but this marked a significant shift in his life. Johnny Ringo versus Wyatt Earp. Throughout 1879 and 1880, Johnny Ringo continued his disruptive behavior. He once shot a man who preferred beer over whiskey and held up a poker game to steal the $500 prize. In 1881, he was taken to Tombstone, Arizona, to stand trial for the poker game incident. However, he was more concerned about rumors linking him to a recent stage robbery. He blamed local lawmen Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday for spreading these rumors. This led to a tense showdown between Ringo, Earp, and Holliday in the streets of Tombstone. As the men reached for their sidearms, a constable intervened, grabbing Ringo from behind and defusing the situation. This altercation heightened Ringo's interest in the feud between the Earps and the Clanton Outlaws. While in jail in 1882, he learned that Earp and his posse were planning to arrest the Clantons in Charleston. Ringo quickly arranged for his bond to be processed and set off for Charleston to warn the Clantons. However, James Earp saw Ringo leave Tombstone and, aware of his intentions, wrote an affidavit labeling Ringo an escaped prisoner trying to thwart the arrest of a U.S. Marshal. This led to a second posse, led by J.H. Jackson, pursuing Ringo. Ike Clanton intercepted the posse and informed Ringo about the warrant for his arrest. Ringo returned to Tombstone, where he stood trial again. Yet, as before, witnesses refused to testify, and Ringo was released. The situation in Tombstone deteriorated further. In March 1882, Morgan Earp was killed by an unknown assailant. Many suspected Ringo, but contemporary records dispute this claim. Testimony in the Tombstone epitaph suggested that Ringo wanted no further part in the feud. His time in Tombstone was later dramatized in the 1993 movie Tombstone. During this period, Earp and his posse faced further complications when they were implicated in the death of outlaw Frank Stillwell, prompting them to flee Tombstone. The following day, Sheriff John Bain organized a group, including Johnny Ringo, to pursue the Earp party. By then, Earp and his men had also killed a Mexican named Florentino Cruz, who some believed to be Indian Charlie, a suspect in the killing of Morgan Earp. In Tombstone, it was reported that Earp shot Curly Bill Brocious in the Whetstone Mountains. Brocious, being one of the most notorious outlaws in the region, drew significant attention, overshadowing Earp's involvement in the deaths of Stillwell and Cruz. By April 1882, Earp and his group had departed Arizona. A month later, Johnny Ringo also left Tombstone, having been cleared of all charges amidst the ongoing turmoil involving lawmen and criminals in the area. Despite his recent reprieve, Ringo was found dead just 2 months later. The mysterious death of Johnny Ringo. The circumstances surrounding Johnny Ringo's death on July 13, 1882, remain shrouded in speculation. Many believe he took his own life, a theory supported by the available evidence. However, some inconsistencies in the way his body was discovered have led others to suspect foul play. Witnesses from Tombstone and nearby Galeyville reported that Ringo appeared depressed and was drinking heavily before his death. He was last seen around July 11th, shortly before leaving Galeyville. 3 days later, his body was found with his back against a tree, holding a .45 caliber Colt in his right hand, and he appeared to have died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Despite the straightforward nature of this discovery, there are claims that suggest murder rather than suicide. Critics point to the number of cartridges in his gun, the absence of powder burns on his hands, the unusual position of his hat, and statements from contemporaries like Wyatt Earp as evidence that Ringo may have been killed. However, these theories are not strongly supported by concrete evidence. Both Jack Burroughs in his 1987 biography, John Ringo, The Gunfighter Who Never Was, and David Johnson in his book, John Ringo. King of the Cowboys have examined the facts and concluded that Johnny Ringo most likely died by suicide. This conclusion marks a somber end to the life of a legendary Old West outlaw. Johnny Ringo's life reads like a thrilling novel, filled with intrigue, drama, and a touch of mystery. From his dramatic confrontations with legendary figures to his enigmatic and controversial end, Ringo's story captivates in ways that few outlaws' tales can. Though his name might not be as familiar as others from the Wild West, his legacy is one that deserves recognition and remembrance. If you found Johnny Ringo's story as fascinating as we do, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the legends of the Old West. Thanks so much.